In 1886, Egyptian archaeologist Gaston Maspero carefully unwrapped a mummy found in a secret royal cache near Luxor. What he saw made him step back in horror. The mummy's face was frozen in a silent scream, mouth open wide, head thrown back, hands bound tightly to its sides. The body had been mummified so hastily that the internal organs had not been properly removed. The wrapping was crude, rushed, almost panicked. This was not how the ancient Egyptians treated their dead. This person had been buried in shame, in secret, without ceremony, without a name. For over 100 years, this mummy was one of the greatest mysteries in Egyptology, a royal body, clearly someone powerful, but deliberately erased from history. Until DNA testing, advanced CT scanning, and chemical analysis finally revealed who this person was. And the answer changed everything we thought we knew about one of the most famous stories in ancient history. Welcome back to the hidden archive where history hides its secrets. Today we are going to ancient Egypt to solve a 3,000-year-old mystery that scientists have been working on for over a century. Subscribe if you're new. A new mystery every week. In 1881, Egyptian authorities received reports of ancient artifacts appearing on the black market in Luxor. The artifacts were extraordinary objects from royal burials, amulets, papyrus scrolls, items that should have been in sealed tombs but were clearly being sold by someone who knew where those tombs were. After a lengthy investigation, authorities tracked the source to a local family, the Abd el-Rasul family, who had discovered a hidden shaft in the cliffs near Deir el-Bahari on the west bank of the Nile. What they had found was one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. At the bottom of a 13-meter shaft, in a hidden chamber cut into the rock, were the mummies of over 50 ancient Egyptian royals, pharaohs, queens, priests spanning nearly 1,000 years of Egyptian history. They had been gathered here in approximately 1000 BC by ancient Egyptian priests who feared the royal tombs were being robbed. Among them was a mummy with no name. No coffin inscriptions identifying who it was. No offerings. No proper burial equipment. Just a body, wrapped hastily, with a face frozen in what appeared to be a scream of agony. The mummy became known simply as Unknown Mani, and from the beginning, it was clear this was not a normal royal burial. Egyptian royal mummies were treated with extraordinary care. The internal organs were removed, preserved, and placed in canopic jars. The body was treated with natron, a natural salt, for 70 days. It was wrapped in fine linen, adorned with amulets, and placed in multiple nested coffins. Unknown Mani had received none of this. The body had been treated with sheepskin, an animal considered ritually impure in ancient Egypt, used for the lowest of burials. The organs had not been properly removed. The arms were bound tightly across the chest, a position associated with prisoners and criminals, not royalty. And the face. The face was frozen in what appeared to be a scream, mouth wide open, as if crying out in pain or terror. For decades, Egyptologists debated whether this meant the person had been buried alive, or whether it was simply the result of the jaw muscles relaxing after death. But the most disturbing question was, who was this person, and why had the most powerful civilization on Earth treated a clearly royal individual like a criminal for over a century? Unknown Mani was studied but not identified. In 2012, a team of researchers including Dr. Zahi Hawass, former head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, conducted the most thorough scientific examination of the mummy ever performed. CT scanning revealed the full skeleton and body structure in extraordinary detail. DNA samples were extracted and analyzed. Chemical analysis was performed on the wrapping materials and preservatives used. The results pointed clearly to a male of royal blood closely related to other royal mummies in the Deir el-Bahari cache. The age at death was estimated at approximately 18 to 20 years old. A young royal male, clearly related to the pharaohs, deliberately buried in shame, without a name, with his face frozen in a scream. The CT scan revealed something else. The young man showed no signs of disease that would have caused his death. He was in good physical health at the time of his death. Whatever killed him, it was sudden and possibly violent. Here is where the investigation became extraordinary. DNA analysis compared unknown Mani's genetic profile to other royal mummies in the collection and found a remarkably close match to two specific individuals. The first was Queen Ti, the powerful mother of the pharaoh Akhenaten. The second was the pharaoh Akhenaten himself, one of the most controversial and fascinating rulers in Egyptian history. This placed unknown Mani as almost certainly a son of Akhenaten, which meant he was a brother or half-brother of one of the most famous pharaohs in Egyptian history, Tutankhamun. The DNA suggested unknown Mani was likely Tutankhamun's older brother, a prince of the royal line whose name was deliberately erased from all records. And this is where the history of ancient Egypt becomes genuinely disturbing. Akhenaten had attempted to revolutionize Egyptian religion, abandoning the traditional Egyptian gods and replacing them with worship of a single deity, the sun Diskaten. After his death, there was a massive religious and political backlash. The priests of the old gods returned to power. Akhenaten's name was erased from monuments. His city was abandoned. His children were apparently not spared either. In 2020, a more detailed analysis of the mummy's facial expression was conducted and it finally resolved the question of the scream. The analysis concluded that the open mouth was not the result of pain or being buried alive. It was the result of the head being wrapped too tightly, too quickly, forcing the jaw downward, combined with the absence of proper embalming that would normally support the facial muscles. In other words, the scream was an accident of hasty burial. But the reason for that hasty burial was not. This prince, whoever he was, whatever his name was, had been erased. His identity was taken from him. His name was never written. No temple recorded his life. No inscription mentioned his death. He was buried with the body of a sheep, an insult. His hands were bound, the position of a prisoner. He was punished, even in death, for something. And we will almost certainly never know exactly what. Here is the twist that makes the story even more extraordinary. The mummy of unknown Mani was found in the same cache as the mummy of Ramesses the Great, arguably the most powerful pharaoh who ever lived. A man who ruled Egypt for 66 years and built temples to himself across the known world. In the same room, a nameless, shamed, screaming prince lying beside the greatest king Egypt ever produced. History remembers Ramesses. History forgot the prince entirely on purpose. His name was taken. His story was erased. His very existence was meant to disappear. And then, 3,000 years later, a family of tomb robbers in Luxor stumbled upon a hidden shaft and pulled him back into the light. We still don't know his name. But we know his face. And we know his story. And we know that someone, somewhere in ancient Egypt, was very afraid of what that story might mean. The mystery of unknown Mani is not fully solved. We know he was a young royal. We know he was related to Tutankhamun. We know he was deliberately erased and buried in shame. We know he died suddenly at 18 to 20 years old. But we don't know his name. We don't know exactly what he did. We don't know who ordered his erasure. 3,000 years of silence broken by science. But the most important question remains unanswered. Who were you? Subscribe to the Hidden Archive, a new mystery, every week, where history hides its secrets. End.